Next up on the FliteCast, Disney has a brand new CEO. Why? And what's going to make this one any different than Bob Iger or Bob Chapek? We'll get into it. Plus, I know there have been a lot of crazy things on this year's 2026 bingo card, but I don't know if any of us had using Christopher Nolan casting, alleged casting, to root out more of Nerd MAGA's bullshit. We'll get into that as well. Thanks, Lupita Nyong'o. All up next on the FliteCast. Welcome to the FliteCast, a place where opinions aren't right or wrong, and where we can agree or disagree about movies, TV, and other assorted media because it's all subjective. My name is Ray. Thank you so much for joining me, and here we are on another day, a different day. This isn't a Saturday or a Sunday. What day is this that I'm dropping the show? Am I back to Tuesday? Yeah, seems like I'm back to Tuesday. I am trying my damnedest to figure out a consistent schedule for all of these records between the main shows and between Patreon. Seriously. And I think I might be able to settle on this. We're trying this. You know what? We're trying this. We're just going to try this right now. The main show on Tuesdays. We're going to try that. So here, I tell you what, we'll just start with a disclaimer right now. You can find this show and all of my other shows at theflightcast.com or wherever you get your podcast, and certainly on the FliteCast YouTube channel. And generally speaking, it's going to look like this. You're going to find this show on Tuesdays. You're going to find a random show, either Thursdays or Fridays. Last Friday, it was Flight Review. Yes, I actually posted a review for the first film, the first theatrical film of 2026 that I saw, Sam Raimi's Send Help. Oh, I have some thoughts. Oh, I had some thoughts about that particular film, especially if you're a Sam Raimi fan. I shared some of them on Vodka Stream last week, but that was on Friday. Thursday, Friday is when you'll see like a random episode of Flightbox, Flight Review, one of those shows, topside if you will. And then of course we'll have Flight Chat on the weekends, probably Sunday. Sunday is going to be the day for Flight Chat. So hopefully we can start to settle in to a regular schedule here. So listener feedback on the weekends, main show on Tuesdays, random show on Thursdays and Fridays. Probably Fridays certainly for Flight Review, unless there's an advanced showing that I actually am able to see. Haven't been able to do that for a while thanks to my work schedule, but it is what it is. So stay tuned for that. We'll see how this schedule goes with respect to consistency. And then, of course, thank you to all the very loyal supporters of patreon.com/theflightcast. Hope that you've been enjoying the bonus content. There was the first episode of Friday Flight. I did post one the other day, and I posted a new episode of Flight Speed talking about Groundhog Day, because yesterday was Groundhog Day. And yes, of course, I talked about the movie, because it's amazing how that movie has really changed our perspective, not only of that holiday, but of time travel movies in general, where we actually use Groundhog Day as a reference point to describe them. So I had that episode, and also the Friday Flight that I posted earlier this week, or late last week, I should say, was a tribute to Catherine O'Hara, the late, great Catherine O'Hara. May she rest in peace. Had a lot of things to say about her. And I did a Sun Just Don't rant, which I am endeavoring to do those on Wednesdays. So that's what the Patreon schedule is going to be. Monday, Flight Speed. Wednesday, Sun Just Don't. Friday, Friday Flight. And then other scattered things here and there, including my special show that I've been concocting for Black History Month. Yeah, for the last couple of years, I've been wanting to do something for Black History Month, literally like every year. And leave it to this year for me to come up with my most ambitious idea there is, with respect to a lot of movies within the Black cultural diaspora that I haven't watched, and a few that I have watched, that I definitely want to talk about. And so stay tuned for that brand new show. It'll be a special one, just like Flight Fright, just like 12 Days of Flight Review. It'll be a special show here on Patreon. We've only got 28 days, right? Actually, less than that, right? That's all they give us. The smallest month out of the year, but hey, we take every bit of those days, right? Whether you were from Wakanda, whether you were from Zamunda, whichever fictional Black excellence you hail from, or real Black excellence you hail from. Definitely want to talk about all of that, so stay tuned. That is coming up. It's a long list. It's a decent amount of movies that I want to get through, so stay tuned for that. Thank you so much for supporting the Patreon. Thank you so much for supporting the FliteCast. Hope that you all enjoy the bonus content. Hope you enjoy the new show. And let's see how far it takes us this particular month, shall we? All right, before we completely eviscerate Nerd MAGA for the umpteenth time, let's talk about Disney for a second. Because we knew for a while that Bob Iger was going to be stepping down as the CEO of Disney. And remember, it was only a couple of years ago that everybody was clamoring for him to come back because Bob Chapek was running the whole operation into the ground. Remember all the ScarJo lawsuits and Emma Stone, coming at him for the Premier Access deal, and content, right? People blame the phase 4 and 5 of the MCU on him because there was no direction. There was this and there was that. Yeah, the 2 years that Chapek was in charge. Yes, the COVID-19 pandemic happened in the middle of his watch, but yeah, a lot of undue blame, if you will, was thrown at his feet. Was it undue? Maybe not. Maybe it was justified. But either way, everybody wanted Iger to come back, but they knew it was temporary. They knew it was only going to be for a short period of time so that he could steady and right the ship. And now it appears that he's finally ready to step away because today Disney named a new CEO and a new president and chief creative officer. Maybe not so much a new chief creative officer and president, but an old name. In fact, neither of these names are necessarily brand new to Disney. Josh D'Amaro is the new chairman of the company's experiences division. It's a promotion for him because apparently he was in charge of the theme parks earlier. I've never heard of this guy. I don't follow the theme park, inner workings and whatnot quite that much. Maybe I should, especially now, because it says the entertainment giant formally revealed his promotion Tuesday morning, also elevating Dana Walden to president and chief creative officer. The pair will move into their new roles on March 18th, the same day that Disney holds its annual meeting. D'Amaro will be also named to the company's board at that time. James Gorman, the chairman of Disney's board of directors, says, quote, Josh D'Amaro possesses that rare combination of inspiring leadership and innovation, a keen eye for strategic growth opportunities, and a deep passion for the Disney brand and its people, all of which make him the right person to take the helm as Disney's next CEO. Throughout this search process, Josh has demonstrated a strong vision for the company's future and a deep understanding of the creative spirit that makes Disney unique in an ever-changing marketplace. He has an outstanding record of business achievement, collaborating with some of the biggest names in entertainment to bring their stories to life in our parks, showcasing the power of combining Disney storytelling with cutting-edge technology. The board believes he is exceptionally well prepared to guide this global company forward to serve our consumers around the world and create long-term value for shareholders. Intriguing. That's the whole statement from Gorman, the head of the board of directors. Very intriguing, especially since this is Disney's third CEO in the last 5 or 6 years, right? Iger stepped down, Chapek temporarily, was in place, and he was supposed to be the heir apparent. And now they changed course off of that because things did not go the way they wanted. Then Iger comes back. The strike happens, right? Remember, the writers and the actors strike happened on Iger's watch as well. But he steadies the ship as best as he can over the last couple of years. And now he really does want to ride off into the sunset on, his 50 yachts or whatever, like all the one percenters have. And now D'Amaro is taking over. And this is the guy that was in charge of the parks. I don't really know a whole lot about this guy. I really don't know anything about this guy, to be honest with you. But everybody is saying all of the big things about him, all of the right things, if you will, and really trying to get us all on board with the idea. I mean, this is all PR. Like everything that they're saying here, this whole thing, I'm immensely grateful to the board for entrusting me with leading a company that means so much to me and millions around the world. Disney's strength has always come from our people and the creative excellence that defines our stories and experiences. There is no limit to what Disney can achieve, and I am excited to work with our teams across the company and brilliant creative partners to honor Disney's remarkable legacy while continuing to innovate, grow, and deliver exceptional value for our consumers and shareholders. And of course, he wants to express his gratitude to Bob Iger for his generous mentorship, friendship, and the profound impact of his leadership. Blah, 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 blah. Gotcha. Understand it. All right. So they're promoting from within. They're bringing up somebody that clearly has been their trusted confidant. He's probably been the heir apparent, the leader in waiting, if you will, the CEO in waiting to take charge of this. Now, what does this all mean, truthfully? I mean, the fact that you are bringing up this guy to take over and hopefully do a better job than Chapek did. Well, that's where this part of the Hollywood Reporter piece written by Alex Reprin gets interesting. because it says the ascension of Damaro bore little resemblance to the Chapek choice. Instead, Damaro's elevation to CEO also ends a years-long and extremely public succession bake-off, with Damaro, Disney Entertainment co-chair Dana Walden frequently cited as the top internal candidates, and the Disney board, led by former Morgan Stanley CEO James Gorman, also exploring if there were any viable external candidates, which of course was different with respect to the Chapek news was a surprise. That was a shock, right? Because Iger was CEO for 15 years, and then Chapek, who also worked in the theme park division, was named the successor. But it says here in a move that stunned Wall Street and Hollywood and seemed to come out of left field. And then everything kind of went off the rails for 2 years, and now they're going in this particular direction. But they're saying that apparently this was a thing, right? Like for the last however long, and maybe those of you that follow the theme park stuff knew about this. I don't know if all the rest of us were completely aware of this, but this is where we have to remember that Disney is more than just a studio. I think a lot of times we're prone to think of Disney as just Disney Plus or just Marvel or just Lucasfilm or just the animated film divisions or Pixar or anything like that. Oh, it started with theme parks. Theme parks is where it began, and so now you're talking about somebody that has already gotten their feet wet in terms of running the theme park end of the spectrum, and now they're going to bring that knowledge and that experience and do a better job. And this is where Damaro actually has something to his benefit. He has 2 years of don't let this happen to you under Chapek's watch. Don't do what he did, right? Don't focus on quantity over quality, right? Like in a subjective sense. Don't crank out content like, oh, we need this for Disney Plus, we need that for Disney Plus. Don't do that. And I'm pretty sure that this time, because of the lessons learned from the Chapek disaster, Iger has probably groomed this a lot differently. Like, okay, listen, here's what you do. You slow things, you keep things slow and steady. Trust in your divisions. Trust what Feige's doing over at Marvel. Trust what Filoni and Brennan are doing over at Lucasfilm as they succeed Kathleen Kennedy, right? Trust in all of your divisions and just steady the ship. Like, keep it guided on the right path. But don't, decide to go rogue, essentially. Because there's no reason for Disney to go, like, what reason is there for them to change like massive course with respect to what they're doing? They've already got enough projects in the hopper with their two biggest IPs, Marvel and Lucasfilm. So there really isn't a whole lot that Damaro needs to do differently. Is there? Right? Do we want him to do things differently? Well, it depends on who you talk to, because you get on social media and people have a whole list of demands in terms of what they want the new CEO to do in terms of like how to deal with Disney Plus shows, what to change about the theme parks. And this is where the theme park people, the theme park elitists, this is where they come into the picture, because they're like, well, you need to change this in the park, you need to change that, you need to do this, you need to do that. Well, more than likely, somebody else is going to be taking over his job, like in charge of the theme parks. And, so are you looking for wholesale change across the board? Yeah, I don't know if that's necessarily going to happen. But this is clearly an internal pick that was signed off by Iger, and he only gets a second shot at this. He doesn't get, there's no third strike in this regard, to be honest with you. So yeah, all he's got to do is essentially keep the ship steady, from what Iger, from how Iger steadied it over the last number of years. Looking at the history of both Damaro and Walden, here a little bit about Dana Walden. Iger says that she is an excellent leader who commands tremendous respect from the creative community. Given that creativity is at the heart of everything Disney does, she is a wonderful choice to serve in this new leadership role. In the years since Dana joined Disney, she has accumulated great knowledge about the many facets of her businesses and brands, and is very well prepared to be president and chief creative officer. It also says that Walden's entertainment co-chair Alan Bergman and ESPN chief Jimmy Pitaro will continue working in their critical roles. So it's interesting that they announced the both of these, Damaro and Walden, and it almost sounds like another one of those co-ventures, if you will, where she's going to be handling the creative and he's going to be handling all the operational stuff, at the head of it, as the CEO. And I know that that's essentially how it works with respect to a chief executive officer and a chief creative officer. But still, it's interesting that the pattern that we have lately, as far as like, announcing pairs, if you will, right? Like DC Studios announced the pair of Peter Safran and James Gunn. Lucasfilm announced the pair of Dave Filoni and Lin-Wen Brennan. Now here we have the pair of Josh D'Amaro and Dana Walden in that regard. So that's interesting. Very intriguing that this is kind of the thing that they're doing now with all the consolidation of these properties and changing hands, because we talk a lot about how DC Studios and Warner Brothers in general has had different ownership, right? There was the AT&T Time Warner deal that didn't last very long, and then it got spun off into Warner Brothers Discovery, and that's when David Zaslav began his era. And now we're talking about a new era beginning, once the Netflix deal is concluded, or long shot if Paramount somehow manages to convince the shareholders to drop them and go with their deal. Either way, that's going to see new ownership. And now we're seeing new leadership for Disney. And, whether you feel that Disney is the flagship studio or not, it is the sign of the times that this is what's happening with all these studios, is that changes in leadership, every couple of years, basically, until they get all their ducks in a row. And, I thought it was also interesting that, I saw in another piece the other day where they were asking, I think they might have asked Iger, if I'm not mistaken, about whether or not, like what did he think about, the Warner Brothers Netflix moves and what was going on in the industry. And he made an offhand comment about how he didn't think Disney like saw the need to acquire any other IP and whatnot. And for one, Disney, I don't think can really afford that. Not the same way that some of these other whales can in that regard, right? Or a Netflix that was able to pony up the money at least so far to this point to buy Warner Brothers in that regard, right? So I don't think Disney can necessarily do that. I do agree with them that they don't really need more IP at this point. Like they have strong enough IP with respect to Marvel Studios and with respect to Lucasfilm. Those two franchises alone is really that's the bulk of what they need. But then they've also got Pixar, and they also have the other animated divisions and plenty of other shows and movies with respect to their labels. They've also got all the Fox stuff. Don't forget that, right? So that means the Predator Badlands and the Alien franchises and whatnot. Anything under the Fox label is going to send help. The movie that I just saw, the new Sam Raimi film, that is a 20th Century Studios film. So that is also under that purview. So yeah, I think he's right. They don't need to really acquire any new IP, but by the same token, it is intriguing that as the consolidation continues with all of these studios, you see the changing of hands. You see the changing of leadership in that regard. And for all we've said about Warner Brothers changing leadership and changing ownership, let's talk a little bit about how it's gone that way for Disney, right? Just within the last 5 to 10 years, we've seen Iger to Chapek to Iger again and now to D'Amaro, right? So it's very intriguing, the shifting sands, if you will. The MCU didn't have to deal with shifting sands as far as CEO during the heyday of the Infinity Saga. And I'm not saying necessarily that, oh, this is such a massive effect on the franchise. If you leave Feige alone, you let him do his job, then you should be fine, right? There's no reason to not trust Kevin Feige to this point. He's given you nearly 2 decades full of goodwill in that regard, as far as success, financially, success in PR and marketing and whatnot. So there's really no reason not to trust him. There's also really no reason not to trust Kathleen Kennedy. And we've already gone over this as far as the people that, wanted to blame her for everything that they didn't like in the franchise, but also ignore her for everything they did like in the franchise, like Andor and The Mandalorian, at least first 2 seasons. I know people were kind of iffy on the 3rd season, whatever, right? But the fact that Filoni and Brennan are taking in charge now, like as she rides off into the sunset, right? There's really no reason to not trust them either at this point. Give them benefit of the doubt since they've been in the thick of it, like, through the Kennedy era and whatnot. So as long as D'Amaro and Walden, like, understand this and pretty much stay out of their way, I don't see where there's necessarily going to be an issue in this regard. It says Disney is an unusual company among the entertainment giants because it has an experiences division that is a major financial force and a major complexifier. D'Amaro was also tasked with overseeing a $60 billion expansion of that business, including a slew of new attractions based on well-known IP, multiple new cruise ships, and even a new theme park and resort in Abu Dhabi. So yeah, he had a lot under his belt running the theme park division. And it says the successful leadership of that division likely helped in his effort to succeed Iger. At the center of the company, however, it says, is the studio, the content engine that feeds the rest of the company. And while D'Amaro is not a creative by trade, it is an area he made a point to highlight whenever he could. All right, what did he say? He said, quote, this goes back to Walt when he envisioned what this company ultimately was going to be. He had storytelling and content in the middle, and all of these businesses surrounding it, such that we could stay with the consumer wherever they were, literally in the world. Well, that's going to perk the ears up of all the investors in Disney Plus, such that we could stay with the consumer wherever they were, literally in the world. You could absolutely apply that to mobile devices, couldn't you? You could absolutely apply that to home theaters and television sets, couldn't you? For sure. So perhaps that's another reason why they've decided to elevate him, because in expanding the business and the expansion that he has made, like they said, $60 billion, new attractions, new cruise ships, the Abu Dhabi theme park and resort, right? So he knows something about global expansion. Well, they're going to need that with respect to the expansion of Disney Plus, and with respect to, all of the expectations for that content creation, if you will, and for that big breadwinner as we move further into the streaming era here with respect to these studios and content. It says Tomorrow also made a point of maintaining close relationships with creatives at the company, something that Chapek was not able to do. So that's also a feather in his cap, because the creatives didn't necessarily like Chapek at all. Like there were definitely some heads being butted. We heard of stressors here and there. There were some people that resigned, Victoria Alonso being one of them, from Marvel Studios, and I'm sure Chapek had something to do with that back then. But it says his elevation tomorrow, that is, will also end the Bob Iger era, with the executive set to serve as an advisor and board member only through the end of the year, when he will officially retire from the company. And then, there's this the whole thing from Gorman about, thanking Iger for his extraordinary leadership and dedication. We asked him to come back as CEO, basically to right the ship. That's essentially, in a ton of words and a long paragraph, basically Chapek was sinking the world and they needed Iger to bring it back out of the water, right? Not counting the strike, because the strike obviously wasn't just Iger, it was Iger and his pals, Zaslav and the rest of the other one percenters that own the studios, right? That's really what it was. So you can't just put all of that on him. But yes, the Bob Iger 2005 to 2020 coming to an end, with a brief return, if you will. It was kind of like Michael Jordan, right? Like he left out on top and then, had to come back out of retirement. But in this case, to fix things so that he could turn it over to somebody like Tomorrow. But, there isn't really a whole lot necessarily to, raise the eyebrows about with respect to this. It'll be intriguing to see whatever creative decisions do change. It will also be intriguing to see if there's any further synergy between the theme park stuff and the IP that Disney has, that Tomorrow might be interested in forwarding, if you will. I mean, we're not going to see a whole lot from him. It's not like we saw a ton from Iger. Iger and CEOs, they speak here and there, but we're still going to hear mostly from Feige and from Filoni and Brennan with respect to the big IP at Disney, or whoever's running the new Pixar deal, or whatever's going on with all of the other. We're going to hear more from the creatives, and we're going to hear more from everybody within the divisions that we're going to hear from Tomorrow or Walden in that regard. If they start to speak up, if they start to get louder, then that would certainly be a change, but I kind of doubt that. They're going to have more than enough on their plate with respect to how to run the entirety of Disney. But yeah, got to talk about a leadership change, got to bring it up. Definitely got to keep it on the radar, because if for no other reason than so that we can stop talking about Bob Iger when we're talking about Disney. And pretty soon, in a little over a month, about a month and a half, we will be able to do so. So we got new leadership at Lucasfilm, and now we've got new leadership at Disney across the board for the entirety of the company to remember. So get used to those names, Josh Tomorrow and Dana Walden. Those are your new CEO and CCO for Disney going forward. All right, then. Now let's talk about this Helena Troy nonsense, because Nerd MAGA is at it again, and Real MAGA, of course, is backing them up, and they both need to just seriously shut the hell up and go off into right off into the shit stain wherever they are. Like, we need to never hear from them ever again, but we always do whenever a brown person is seemingly elevated into a role. And I want to be clear that as of right now, this is still apparently only a rumored role. Now the thing is, this has been going on for a couple of days, and Universal and Christopher Nolan have not said anything to dispel this rumor. The rumor being that this summer, when we watch the Odyssey, Christopher Nolan's next massive epic at Universal, that Lupita Nyong'o will be Helen of Troy. That is the rumor going around town like for almost the past week at this point, and nobody has said this is false. Nobody has come out to dispel this whatsoever. And maybe there's a school of thought that says, well, whether it's true or not, they're talking about the movie. Maybe so, but this is reaching, like, again, outside of the nerd MAGA sphere. The South African Nazi himself, Elon Musk, decided to chime in on this. And apparently what occurred is that he saw a poster on X take issue with this. And of course, I'm not on X, so I saw this. Variety reported on this, Deadline, and a number of other rags reported on this. It says, on Sunday morning, one X-user claimed that if Nyong'o plays Helen of Troy, it is an insult to the Greek poet Homer, who wrote the Odyssey around 700 BCE because he originally described the fictional character as fair-skinned, blonde, and the face that launched 1,000 ships because she was so beautiful that men started a war over her. Musk later commented on the post saying, quote, Chris Nolan has lost his integrity. And of course, it's hardly just the South African Nazi speaking his ugly mouth about this. Newsmax commentators have talked about forced diversity yet again. Here we go. They're putting the blacks and everything now. What are we supposed to do? This is ridiculous. Get woke, go broke, which has never been true, ever. In fact, you know what? Let's check on that Melania hotline. How's that documentary doing? Yeah. Variety is such bullshit. These are the same people, and I know I just quoted them, this piece from Jack Dunn, but that was only to get exactly what Elon Musk said, because again, I'm not on X. But Variety is such bullshit. They slam Sinners after week one with respect to, we don't know, it's going to be an uphill battle over its profitability, but then they talk about how Melania was this record-breaking for a documentary. Get the hell out of here, Variety, you bootlicking pissants. This is ridiculous. Utterly ridiculous. And this is a laughable thing. But this MAGA and Nerd MAGA find the easiest ways to play victim, right? These fragile white men cannot wait to play victim. I mean, they are like spoiled little brats. I'm going to read this with respect to Helen of Troy because, and I'm taking this straight from the wiki, if you will, okay? Helen of Troy, right? Ancient Greek. Also known as Helen of Sparta, and in Latin, Helena, was a figure in Greek mythology. What's that? Mythology. Greek mythology. Not real. Not a historical document whatsoever. Greek mythology. Greek myth. Said to have been the most beautiful woman in the world. Believed to have been the daughter of Zeus by Leda or Nemesis, and the sister of Clytemnestra, Castor, Pollux, Philonoe, Phoebe, and Timandra. She was first married to King Menelaus of Sparta, who became by her the father of Hermione, and according to the others, of Nicostratus also. Her subsequent marriage to Paris of Troy was the most immediate cause of the Trojan War. Elements of her putative biography come from an ancient Greek and Roman authors such as Homer, Hesiod, Euripides, Virgil, and Ovid. In her youth, she was abducted by Theseus. A competition between her suitors for her hand in marriage saw Menelaus emerge victorious. All of her suitors were required to swear an oath known as the Oath of Tyndareus, promising to provide military assistance to the winning suitor if Helen were ever stolen from him. The obligations of the oath precipitated the Trojan War. When she married Menelaus, she was still very young. In most accounts, including Homer's, Helen ultimately fell in love with Paris and willingly went to Troy with him, though there are also stories in which she was abducted. The legends of Helen during her time in Troy are contradictory. Homer depicts her ambivalently, both regretful of her choice and sly in her attempts to redeem her public image. Other accounts have a treacherous Helen who simulated Bacchic rites and rejoiced in the carnage she caused. In some versions, Helen does not arrive in Troy, but instead waits out the war in Egypt. In Egypt? Where's Egypt? Well, let's just put that aside for a second. It says ultimately Paris was killed in action, and in Homer's account, Helen was reunited with Menelaus, though other versions of the legend recount her ascending to Olympus instead. A cult associated with her developed in Hellenistic Laconia, both at Sparta and elsewhere. At Therapne, she shared a shrine with Menelaus. She was also worshipped in Attica and on Rhodes. Stories of her beauty have inspired artists and writers to represent her as the personification of ideal human beauty. Images of Helen started appearing in the 7th century BC. In classical Greece, her elopement or abduction was a popular motif. In medieval illustrations, this event was frequently portrayed as a seduction, whereas in Renaissance paintings, it was usually depicted as a forced abduction by Paris. Christopher Marlowe's lines from his tragedy Dr. Faustus in 1604 are frequently cited. Was this the face that launched 1,000 ships and burnt the topless towers of Ilium? Okay, why did I read all of that? I read all of that because, again, this is Greek mythology. Said to have been the most beautiful woman in the world, believed to have been the daughter of Zeus by Leda or Nemesis, sister of Clytemnestra, Castor, Pollux, Philonoe, Phoebe, and Timandra. Not real people. There is no historical precedence with respect to this. So that means that MAGA and Nerd MAGA are arguing that Homer's work is being desecrated because you're casting a black woman. Well, here's the deal. If you're going to sit there and tell me that all of a sudden you care that much about the Greek poems of Homer, you care that much about the Iliad, you care that much about the Odyssey, I'm going to call bullshit. You do not care. You most certainly do not care. And with respect to Helen, her race is not important to the character. What is important to the character is that she is the face that launched 1,000 ships, right? That she is said to be the most beautiful woman in the world. That she is said to be the one that married Paris and started the Trojan War. And listen, not for nothing, but if I poll a decent amount of cisgendered straight men, they're going to tell me that Lupita Nyong'o probably fits a modernized version of that description. Open-minded, non-racist people, right? Racist pieces of shit who don't like a droplet of black skin anywhere. Like that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about regular, rational, logical individuals, right? And you know what? Not even just men, women. Women find Lupita Nyong'o quite attractive, quite beautiful in that regard. So you're telling me that she can't fit the bill? No, I beg to differ. Greek mythology says otherwise. The basic description of Helen certainly fits her. And if you have this big of a problem with it, if this is really your line in the sand, if you're that beholden to the works of Homer and how he allegedly originally described, because I haven't read the Iliad or the Odyssey. If that is truly how she was described and you're that upset about it, well, you're just exposing your racism. Because who really gives a shit? Like, who logistically cares that much other than the perpetual victimhood of MAGA, right? This is what they've been afraid of for years, the great replacement. Oh no, the black people are trying to replace us. Oh no, the brown people are going to take all of our jobs. That's why we've got to kick them out of the country. Yeah, it's all the same shit. It's all the same shit. This is ridiculous. Utterly ridiculous. And, not for nothing, but if I can do a Google search and look up a little movie from 10 years ago called Gods of Egypt, Gods of Egypt, mind you, right? Egypt is located in Africa, just so we're all clear on this, right? I know if you're listening to this, you're aware of that. But if I can look at the cast of this fantasy action film directed by Alex Proyas, Gods of Egypt, and I see Set and Horus and Beck, these are Egyptian gods, by the way, because I know a little bit about Egyptian mythology. Set was played by Gerard Butler. The white dude that played King Leonidas in 300. Yeah, he played Set, an Egyptian god. Horus, another Egyptian god, was played by Nikolai Coster-Waldau. Littlefinger, Jaime Lannister from Game of Thrones. Yeah, that he played an Egyptian god. And Brenton Thwaites. Yeah, that's right. Nightwing, Robin, Dick Grayson himself from Titans. He played Beck. Get the hell out of here. This movie exists. This is a real movie. I don't give a shit that it has 15% rotten on the health site. I don't care if Metacritic gave it a 25. I don't care if 72% of Google users liked the movie. The fact is that movie existed and I didn't hear shit. I didn't hear anybody. Where was the groundswell? Oh no, this was perfectly fine for MAGA. This was perfectly fine for, Elon Musk and any other Nazi hellscapes that he, decides to engage in, right? That was perfectly fine. You can cast white people in Egyptian roles all the live long day. And don't get me started on Christian Bale, Australian Christian Bale playing Moses, and Joel Edgerton playing Ramses in Exodus Gods and Kings. Whenever white people are cast in these roles that are clearly from ancient Egypt, a sector of the world where the melanin was clearly darker than the actors being cast, we don't hear all this outrage, right? Maybe from our end of it, maybe we look at that movie and go, well, we're not watching that because it's terribly inaccurate. We're not going to do this, right? Maybe we look at it from that perspective, but we hear nothing from these clowns. We hear nothing from people like Elon Musk. We hear nothing from Newsmax. We hear nothing from all these racist bitches with respect to, oh, the historical accuracy there. No, you're perfectly fine taking over all the brown roles, but let a brown person take over a role that you have historically assigned to a white woman, right? Oh, yes, because Diane Kruger played Helen of Troy in Troy back in 2004. That means that white women forever can be the only ones that play Helen of Troy. Let's not forget the fact that, or dismiss the fact rather, that Helen of Troy apparently has been played by brown people, brown women in other forms, right? Galen Gorg, I found out, played Helen of Troy in an episode of Xena Warrior Princess. Galen Gorg, may she rest in peace. For those of you who don't know her, let's see. She was Angie in RoboCop 2, Kane's love interest, and also she was in an episode of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. She was the gym trainer that was like kind of bullying Will. This was like in the 4th or 5th season, that he ended up dating for a little bit. I forget if this was before or after Lisa. I don't know. But if you Google the name Galen Gorg, you'll see who I'm talking about. And you'll probably recognize her. May she rest in peace. She died some years ago. But she was clearly not white. She played Helen of Troy in an episode of Xena Warrior Princess. Like, it's a fictional character. It's a mythological character. It's from Homer's Greek like poem, like however thousands of years ago, however long ago it was, right? Why are you that incensed about it? Because it's a black woman. That's why you're that incensed about it. And heaven forbid a black woman ever play a character that is said to be the most beautiful woman in the world with a face that launched 1,000 ships. Yes, a black woman can't possibly play that because you, in your twisted racist brains, can't possibly wrap your heads around that. It's ridiculous. And you guys know what I'm saying here. And you guys understand, if you're listening to this show, you understand where I'm coming from. And again, this hasn't been officially confirmed. Like I said, Universal has not officially said boo to this. Christopher Nolan hasn't officially said anything about this. This is a rumor that's been running for, well, I guess it hasn't quite been a week. This started Sunday. Or maybe it started before then, and Musk commented on it on Sunday. And it's been a number of days now, and it's reached The View. Whoopi Goldberg trashed Elon Musk, understandably and rightfully so, as a result of his bitch-ass comments. And this is going to continue to happen, right? This is what we're talking about when we talk about institutionalized bigotry and why representation matters. Because the second black women are ascended to any type of role like this, the second that a director, and again, this is assuming that this is the case. We know Lupita's in the film. We know that she's been cast in the movie. This is assuming that she is indeed Helen of Troy. If these rumors are true, then this is Christopher Nolan basically saying, well, it's my movie, it's my mythology. I am going to cast a beautiful woman like Lupita Nyong'o in this role because she will fit the role of Helen of Troy very nicely for my narrative. Yes, absolutely. Like what is the issue? The issue is the racists. The issue is the bigots. Right, and this is why, unfortunately, because of the racists and the bigots, this is why these types of roles are few and far between, unfortunately, for black women in Hollywood. If this turns out to be the case, and I guess depending on how the character of Helen is portrayed, right? Because according to the wiki, she could be portrayed, as kind-hearted or potentially wicked in that regard, right? And I guess, or maybe even a blend of both. We'll see. But either way, the idea that role can only be played by a white woman. It's a mythological character that's supposed to be born from Zeus. Seriously, like what are we doing here? I know what we're doing here. We're being bigoted pieces of shit. And we're relying on our institutionalized racism and bigotry to support our ridiculous beliefs that black women should never be ascended to a character like Helen of Troy. That's only reserved for fair-skinned, blonde-haired women. Bullshit. Absolute bullshit. And I know if you're listening to this, you know that it's bullshit. But I definitely did not want to ignore it if it is indeed true, right? And I have to keep prefacing that if it is indeed true because, as of right now, we're all reacting to a rumor. And it's all over threads. It is all over social media. It's not like people haven't commented on it. I had another post go minor league viral. That's what I'm calling it. Any of my posts that get like over 1,000 or 2,000 likes, I'm calling that minor league viral because it's not viral. It's just, it got a decent amount of traction and some attention. I had another one. I had an absolute where I called the racist out and provided again a picture of Lupita, as many have, to say, looks like she could be Helen of Troy to me. The closed-mindedness, that is not what sells. That is not what brings people to the theater in that regard. I guarantee you that if you were to take any random, white blonde-haired woman, whoever it is, I mean, I'm not saying the Odyssey wouldn't sell, but it'll sell even more now, right? If Lupita actually is Helen of Troy, if we see a full-blown trailer for the Odyssey that shows that she is Helen of Troy, oh, that's going to gain even more attention. You're going to have black audiences that may or may not have been interested in seeing the Odyssey will see it then. Oh, they'll see it for day one, right? And however boring they may think it is, they won't consider it boring because they have seen her elevated to that role. And that's why representation matters, because it brings a sector of the population into the conversation, ethnically and culturally speaking, in that regard. We're not used to that, right? We're used to a role like Helen of Troy being given to the blonde-haired white girl. We're used to that. That's how institutionally it has been cast over time. Whenever there's been a change, that's the exception to the rule. And if that's what this is, if that's what's happening here, then that's what's going to pique the interest. It's really not going to anger the majority of the general audience. No, what it's going to do is the general audience that was on the fence about seeing the movie are going to go, oh, Lupita's in it. She's playing Helen of Troy. Okay, maybe I'll go check that out. It might not be opening weekend, but could be the later weekend. And that could spell success for Universal and Christopher Nolan just in that casting, right? Never mind Matt Damon. Never mind everybody else that's been cast in this film that's already going to be somewhat of a draw for it, in addition to Christopher Nolan being a draw himself. But that could also be part of it as well. So this idea, again, get woke, go broke has always been a lie. It's always been a fragile, Charmin soft snowflake lie that, the Nerd MAGA and MAGA tell themselves to cope with the fact that diversity is actually what sells. Diversity is truly what sells, and we've seen diversity sell time and time again. And if this rumor ends up being true, then it's going to sell again. It is. I guarantee you, Fox News can say whatever the hell they want. Newsmax and Musk and all the other South African Nazis and all the other assholes can say whatever they want. ICE can say shit if they want to. F them. Like, whatever they say about this, it's not going to affect the grosses of this film. It's not going to affect the box office performance. People are going to come out to see this film because it's a Christopher Nolan epic. It's set in the time of the Odyssey, right? It's going to have Matt Damon and other actors in it. And hey, as an added bonus, Lupita Nyong'o as Helen of Troy. Again, should this rumor be real? Yeah, that's a draw. There's no detraction for that whatsoever. And this forced diversity bullshit, like, that's really a phrase that just does not exist. Forced diversity. No. In order for it to be forced diversity, there would have to be equality first. And there isn't. There is not equality when it comes to these roles and when it comes to these characterizations and actors that are given a chance. Not even just actors. Actors, directors, writers. We don't have enough Ryan Cooglers. We don't have enough Nia DaCostas. We don't have enough Jordan Peels. We need more. We most certainly do. And we do not have enough women like Lupita Nyong'o being cast in roles prominently like this if she is indeed Helen of Troy. We need more of that. And Christopher Nolan. If Christopher Nolan, one of the greatest auteurs of our time, is literally saying, this is my Helen of Troy, deal with it, then, I mean, bravo to him. I mean, he's already one of my favorite directors, but bravo to him for making that choice, because clearly he does not have the bigoted bones and the bigoted mindset in his head that, many others of his ilk have been raised with, unfortunately. So, yeah, this ordinarily wouldn't be like a thing that I talk about because, again, it's still rumored and it really has not been officially confirmed. But like I said, this got as far as The View. Whoopi Goldberg talked about this and got on Elon Musk for his bullshit, saying anything about that X post. And, the fact that Musk said anything, and the fact that, again, as I'm checking again, neither Christopher Nolan nor Universal has debunked this. No one has officially come out and said, well, that rumor is nonsense, so you guys are arguing for nothing. No, nobody has said that. Nobody is saying this whatsoever. So this isn't being, shot down so far, right? And perhaps it's a case where, we won't see it confirmed or denied until we actually see Helen of Troy in the trailer, right? Or we see who Lupita is playing in the trailer. One or the other in that regard, right? But either way, I didn't want to ignore this. Didn't necessarily want to spend a ton of time talking about it, but definitely wanted to acknowledge it. I mean, everybody here pretty much knows where I stand with it, but definitely wanted to, chime in on it and officially give my thoughts on Nerd MAGA and MAGA's full bullshit on display. Their Charmin soft snowflake victimhood bullshit constantly on display. This is how you know they're a bunch of weak-willed pussies. Seriously, this is how you know. This is absolutely how you know that they are just weak-willed assholes, because this is what they complain about. This is what they're upset about. This is what they think is top of mind. This is what they think is going to move the needle. No, it moves the racist needle. It moves the bigoted needle. It moves the institutionalized totalitarian authoritarianism needle. That's what it moves. And that needle is full of shit, and always has been from the beginning of time in that regard. So, you know what? I sincerely hope, as I'm sure many others do, that Lupita Nyong'o is in fact Helen of Troy, and it'll contribute to Odyssey's success. And Christopher Nolan will speak highly of her and talk about how awesome she is, and she'll talk about how awesome Nolan is, and all of the racists can put that in their pipes and smoke it to hell, straight to hell, as far as I'm concerned. So there you have it with respect to that. And with that, so concludes another episode of the FliteCast. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for supporting the FliteCast and paying attention to my ramblings and my ravings with respect to all of this stuff. If you have any thoughts with respect to either of the topics I talked about tonight, whether it is Disney's new CEO and Chief Creative Officer, or if you have any thoughts on this whole Lupita Nyong'o Odyssey stuff that you haven't necessarily shared, if you have any thoughts on what I said and my perspective with respect to that, whether you agree or disagree, and mind you, if you disagree, that'll be an intriguing discussion that I would be willing to entertain so long as it didn't evolve into nonsense and bigotry itself. Don't want that to happen. I don't know how many of you would disagree with me, because I feel like most of you would agree with me. But if you want to have a discussion about it, if you want to talk about that, and if you want to talk about representation matters and whatnot, as long as you're respectful and I don't think that you're trolling, then we can certainly have a discussion like that. But bear in mind, I've seen all the trolls. I've seen all the arguments. I know what a trolling argument looks like. I've blocked thousands of them literally on social media in the last 10 years, without question, from all of my social media accounts. So, provided that it's nothing like that, you know where to find me on Threads and Instagram at the FliteCast, on BLUESKY at FliteCast. You can comment on the comment section for this episode on the FliteCast YouTube channel. There's also the FliteCast Facebook page, and of course I can be reached by email at ray@theflightcast.com. All right, take care. Stay safe out there. Seriously, stay safe out there. And I will see you all next time. Take it easy.